Welcome to the Untypical Parent Talks podcast, where doing things differently is more than okay. I'm Liz Evans and I'm the Untypical OT and I'm your host. And I'm here to open up conversations that go beyond the stereotypical child, parent and family. This is your go-to space to find your backup team, the people who get it. We were never meant to go it alone. We'll be exploring a wide range of topics because every family is unique and there's no one box that fits all when it comes to family. In this first series, Are You the Perfect Parent? And spoiler alert, there's no such thing. We'll be exploring how we can support our kids, our families, and most importantly, ourselves. No judgment, just real talk about meeting everyone's needs without leaving anyone, especially parents, behind. Are you ready? Come join me. This podcast episode is proudly sponsored by Something Profound. They create funny t-shirts, mugs and more, specifically designed for neurodivergent people and those with chronic illnesses, because we all deserve a good laugh. A lovely friend of mine gifted me a mug that says, "Not enough spoons to give a fork," and every time I use it, it makes me smile. It's such a great reminder to embrace the chaos with a little bit of humour. Want to grab your own or know a friend who could do with a laugh? Head over to somethingprofound.co.uk and use the code LIZUOT. It's case sensitive, so you'll need to use capital letters for your 15% off your order. And don't forget to follow Sam, the founder of Something Profound. You'll find her on Instagram and Facebook at something_profound_clothing. If you've got something to say it with something profound. Today on the podcast, I'm thrilled to welcome Jen Wilson, a brilliant strategist, facilitator, and founder of the International Day of Consent. Jen works with rebels with a cause, queer, neurodivergent, value-led humans, helping them build consent-led lives, businesses, and movements. Their work is all around personal rebellion and collective change, inviting us to disrupt softly, rebel loudly, and stay unapologetically irregular. I can't wait to dive into this conversation. Welcome to the podcast, Jen. Jen, thank you ever so much for joining me today on the Untypical Parent podcast.
My pleasure.
It's lovely to have you. I've got with me Jen Wilson, sometimes also known as Irregular Jen. And Jen, I start off all my podcasts for this series, which is Are You the Perfect Parent? And by asking that very question. So, Jen, are you the perfect parent?
Yes, of course I am. No, absolutely
Perfect
not.
answer, Jen.
Absolutely not. Do you know what? I've got a big thing about this, which is anyone who says they're the perfect anything, or that they know all the answers to something, or they have the one true way, and what they say is the right way, can get lost as far as I'm concerned. That's
Do you
nonsense.
trust them? I don't trust them. When someone says to me
Absolutely
they're
not.
perfect, I just think I've got alarm bells going woo
Yeah,
woo.
absolutely not. And actually, I think that ironically, you are closer to a perfect parent if you can acknowledge that making mistakes is absolutely essentially part of it. Because
Yeah,
making mistakes is how we learn.
yeah.
How else, no, absolutely, I'm not the perfect parent.
And do you think, Jen, has that always been the case for you? Have you been always really comfortable with that? Has that kind of come from as soon as you had kids that you thought, actually, I know I don't have to be perfect? Or has that kind of happened for you as you've gone through it?
I'm in an interesting place because my children, one of them is almost 29 and the other one is 14.
Okay.
So who I was 29 years ago and who I was 14 years ago, obviously still the same person, but I'd learned a lot between the ages of 25 and 40.
Yeah.
So I I knew when I was 25 that I wasn't going to be a perfect parent because I
Mm.
was young. I was in an unstable relationship. It wasn't in any sense an ideal situation, but I knew that being a parent was something that I would I would learn as I went, and that I would do it in a way that was true for me and in a way that I would I would just acknowledge, it's that poem, isn't it? Am I allowed to swear on your podcast?
You can swear to a certain degree,
Well,
Jen.
there's that.
I have to make sure that people are aware. So just so aware people,
Just going to say the
Jen
F
might swear.
word. Just going to say the F word. I won't swear a lot, but it's that phrase, that poem. I can't remember
Yes.
the name. So your parents fuck you up.
Yeah.
That's what they do. So I knew that. I knew that
Yeah.
I would make different mistakes than my own parents had made,
Yeah.
and I surely have. And my parents weren't bad parents. They weren't brilliant parents. They were just doing their best, like we all do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Funnily enough, I was just going to ask you then, did that come from your experience of being parented?
Um, I guess a bit. Well, my parents are very much of a different generation, They're in their late 80s now, and they were very much of that sort of grown up post-war um, nuclear family, traditional values, and I am very, very left field and queer and irregular and different and quirky. And my mum just holds her head in her hands, bless her, and goes, "What are you going to do next?"
Yeah.
They despair of me a little bit. They were loving and kind and caring parents, and
Yeah.
and I certainly learned kindness and forgiveness as kind of core values
Yeah.
from them.
Yeah. And as part of your family now, Jen, how's your family made up? Who's that? Who is that? Kind of, have you got diagnoses in there? Because obviously we've got
Yeah,
parents listening that there might be all sorts of diagnoses within their family, diagnosed or undiagnosed.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I have an ADHD diagnosis. I have some autistic traits. I don't know if I would get a diagnosis. I got diagnosed with ADHD at 50.
okay.
Um, and the way that the length of time it takes and the effort it makes and the value it gives you. It was useful getting an ADHD diagnosis from the point of view of being able to get meds, but also from the point of view of, and I think this is a thing about diagnoses is, I think I'd spent 50 years going, what the hell's wrong with me? Why can't I do that? Why am I not able to do that thing that everybody else seems to find so easy? And then it was like, oh, that's why. And it was the relief that came
Yeah.
with that that was so great about getting a diagnosis.
Yeah.
Um, I wouldn't like to speculate about any of my family apart from my daughter, who's 14, who lives with me now, who is on the pathway for assessment for ADHD and autism. And I
Okay.
believe is probably an ADHD profile, home educated since the
Okay.
lockdowns. She was at primary school and she seemed okay, but she was just beginning to get a little bit unhappy and having problems with friendship groups and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I can only speculate what might have happened if lockdown hadn't kind of interrupted that in the way that it
Yeah.
did. Um,
So she
and
never got back after lockdown.
No, and that was when the lockdowns happened, I went, oh my God, she's so much happier.
Mm.
She's so much happier. And look at this blooming kid, who'd been so quiet and sad a lot of the time. And she was just so much happier. And I just went, I'm not rushing to put her back.
Mm.
And then we found alternatives. She went to a forest school for a while. She presently goes to a democratic school in Hebden Bridge,
Okay.
which you'll have to finish this summer, but it's been brilliant there. Hebden Bridge Learning Community. She goes there 3 days a week, and it's a fantastic environment where very much based on consent, actually, which is my big thing, as you know.
Yeah.
Um, it's very much about the young people and the teachers and the parents all being involved in making decisions together. And what the young people learn in that school, they're in kind of mixed age groups that are about three years breadth to the
Mm.
group, um, small groups, and they they do traditional subjects like maths and English and science and stuff. But what happens is the young people choose a theme each term or each half term when they're smaller, and everything is taught in the context of that theme that they're interested
So they
in.
choose it specifically themselves.
Yeah, they have a democratic
Amazing.
meeting once a week, and at the end of each term, they sit down and they all vote together in their class group what subject they want to teach. They all put ideas in and they filter it down and they get down to the one that they all agree on. So, for example, there was one term recently when they were doing a theme of kind of like horror and scary movies and ghosts and stuff. And so in science they were learning about the adrenaline and all the kind of physical
Oh,
responses of
cool. Yeah, yeah,
fear.
yeah. And linking it all in.
And then in English, they were doing, stories that were kind of obviously age appropriate, stories of that sort of thing, and
Mm,
art projects that relate to the theme. And so you can get a lot from a theme and cover all kinds of different
yeah.
subjects, but it's something that the young people have chosen themselves and that they're really interested in learning about. And
It sounds
so
like
they're
an
really up.
amazing school.
It is an amazing school. Before that, she was like, she was getting, she hated English. She absolutely hated English
Yeah.
because they took all the joy out of it.
Yeah.
Now she's a really voracious reader. She likes to write. She's really imaginative. And, it's because she's allowed to read what she's interested in
Yeah.
and write
Yeah.
what she's interested in and without the pressure to do a particular type of handwriting in a certain length of time. It's
Was that
just,
decision easy for you, Jen, to make that decision to take her? Because I've also got a son at school. He's on an EATOS package, and lots of people that have listened probably hear me talk about it, which is educated other than at school. Um, and that decision for me was really hard. But I know I've spoken to other parents that said, actually, do you know what? No, it was just I knew it was hard. It was hard, but I just did it. Whereas I remember it took me forever to get to that decision.
um, I think if I hadn't been pushed, as I say, by the fact that the lockdowns were happening,
Yeah.
and then there was this moment where they're like started to go back to school, and at that time, um, I won't go into the details, but there were various other bumpy things going on in our life. And I just went, the instability that's going to come with schools opening and shutting and it all being a
Yeah.
bit weird. Let's just stick with what we're doing for now. Let's try this
Mm.
forest thing. Let's do some other things. And so we kind of drifted into it without a great deal of thought, actually. It was a There was a decision to be made when she turned 11 and could have been going to high school.
Yeah.
And that was harder. And we are about to hit another bumpy patch, which is she'd be going into year 9 this September, and the school she's at doesn't do a GCSE syllabus. She's doing
Uh,
pre-GCSE work with them. So
yeah.
quite what's going to happen next, I'm not sure, and I'm looking at all of the EHCP, OTAS, all of that stuff, possibilities, and trying to weigh it up. Because with the best will in the world, I'm not a teacher.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said for unschooling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that principle that I was just talking about in her school of encouraging young people to learn, to
Mm.
be curious, to want to find out about the world and to learn what they're interested in. I think there's masses of value in that. However, we also have to operate inside a world that values particular types of qualifications and
It's
particular
so hard,
types
isn't it? Because I
of
often
skills
have
and
this conversation with my son because he'll just say to me, he's very interest led and but very, very good at maths, very
mm,
good at English, and then just goes to me, but what's the point?
yeah.
I don't want to, I'm not going to do anything to do with that when I'm older. So what's the point? I don't want to learn it. And I keep on saying to him, I know that, but we just need to pass it so we
Yeah.
can get to the next step.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think it's that, and so when I'm talking about consent, there's a big thing for me about. I think for the most part, our children and young people are certainly by school and by traditional parenting, they're not given a great deal of agency. We are expected to be accountable for our children, which is appropriate. We're
mhm.
the adults, they're the children, especially when they're small. Um, but for me, I really want my kids to learn to become accountable for themselves, learn to use their agency, learn to take responsibility for themselves, because that's what goes with having freedom and choice and deciding how you want to show up in the world. The most important part of growing
Mm.
up. And if we just decide stuff for our kids and put them through a system without ever questioning anything and let authorities who know better because they're the authorities and the experts tell us what's right for our kids,
Yeah.
I'm not. I kind of. I'm naturally a questioner. I am irregular Jen for a reason. I'm curious. I'm queer. I'm questioning things, and I'm going, really? It goes back to that thing. There's no one true way,
Yeah.
and
Again, when you say
one size does
consent,
not fit all. It's
yeah.
really how it is.
When you say consent, can
Yeah.
you talk to us a bit about what you mean by consent? Because people might have quite a narrow view of what consent means. They might have a very specific view about what consent is, and actually, it could be a lot bigger than that. And I just,
Yeah.
in your
Yeah.
words,
Thank you. Yeah, so as I say, I'm consent is my thing. I'm the founder of the International Day of Consent.
which day is that, Jen? Tell us.
It's 30th of November every
Okay.
year. And I founded it in 2018. And when I'm stymied because when I say the word consent, it creates an instant misunderstanding. People think I'm talking about sex.
Hmm.
I am not shy of talking about sex, and obviously, sex is an environment where consent is really
Yeah.
important. However, consent is a part of every single aspect of our everyday lives, and I think that the other place that people encounter consent in their as a word is, do you consent to cookies on this website, or do you consent
Yes.
to give your data protection? Tick a box.
Yes.
So we have this kind of yes means yes, no means no, tick box kind of an understanding of what consent is. And that's not how I see it at all. As I said to you before, I see consent as being about our agency and our accountability and the choices that we make and how we show up in the world. So, my working definition of consent is that it's a practice for connection whereby everyone who is directly involved or impacted by a decision, by the consent that's going on, is comfortable enough and secure enough to continue.
Yeah.
Now, the to continue is really important there because it's live. Consent is not this one-off thing, this
Mm.
obstacle, and often this is often how it's taught in sexual consent. Is taught in schools as a sort of gatekeeper model, where someone has the consent and someone wants the consent, and it's like this obstacle to get through, and once you've got it, it's a green light to continue with whatever.
Yes.
Um, for me, that's hugely problematic, whether we're talking about sex or whether we're talking about um, agreeing to uh, go to school, agreeing to eat particular foods,
Yeah.
agreeing to go to sleep at a certain time, whatever it is we're agreeing to,
Hmm.
you change your mind. Context shifts. What you agree to when you're 7 years old and what you agree to when you're 17, you're both technically a child, completely different context.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely.
How you parent a 17-year-old or a 29-year-old and how you parent a 14-year-old or a 4-year-old, completely different. So you can't see that as this one-off transaction thing. It is very much a thing that you practice.
Mm.
And the other thing I think that's really important about consent is that it operates on the level of the consent you give yourself, the permission you give yourself on a day-to-day basis. All those times you go, I've got to do this, I have to do this, I must do that, or I should, the should word, do the other. Or because of the rules of the world around
Mm.
us, I can't possibly do that. People like me aren't allowed to do that. It's not okay for me to do that. I can't show up that way.
Mm.
And all of that is learned from the system that we're in. And that system is hierarchical.
Yeah.
It's quite coercive. It's got lots of privilege and power structures inside it. So what we agree to in our own brains is influenced by what we've learned from society. And
Mm.
actually, I think vice versa. So I think that when we question things and go, well, actually, no, well, that's not okay for me. I'm going to do it differently and show up in the world doing things like going, actually, no, mainstream school's not right for my child, or no, that teacher that says they know best doesn't know my child's needs correctly,
Mm.
or whatever it is we're resisting that is standard and mainstream and normal. Um, is actually a little bit of pushing back against that oppressive culture and asking for something kinder and more consensual and more comfortable and safe for all of us.
And that can be really hard to do because when I'm hearing you talk, I'm thinking I am, for want of a better, I am a people pleaser. I'll admit that, and I will mask. And I can imagine, lots of that around the consent stuff is actually when you feel like you don't have that agency, is that actually those mechanisms will kick in, that you become that people pleasing kind of person, that you begin to mask. And we all know the dangers of masking and what that does to our mental health long term.
Yes,
And I'd
absolutely.
never really thought around that about in relation to consent. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and of course those cultural beliefs and those sort of deeply ingrained things we've learned about ourselves from a very, very young
Mm,
beginning of our lives, right through to, getting a diagnosis at 50, really peeled back layers for me of what
yeah.
was possible. Um, and so, yeah, I think that it really for me, when I advocate for consent, when I talk about the International Day of Consent, what I'm trying to unlock for people is that we all have agency, that we are all capable of deciding things. And sometimes we don't let ourselves make those choices because we've let this insidious belief system
Mm,
limit us in some ways. And we are capable of going, hang on a minute, not necessarily yes or no,
yeah.
but just hang on a minute.
Just
I
taking a
don't know
pause.
if I really know what I think about this. I don't
Yeah.
know for sure exactly if I've got. And then my working model is a thing I call the consent compass. So at the center of the consent compass is you with your agency. That's you making choices, making decisions, your decisions. The outside of the consent compass is your accountability. And the two are ideally in balance. So obviously, small children don't have much agency, nor do they have a lot of accountability. We, as the adults, carry that accountability for them. As you get older, your agency and accountability should develop kind of like together. And where we have problems with consent is where people have a lot of agency and aren't fully behaving in an accountable way for their own
Mm,
behavior,
yeah.
or they're shouldering more accountability than they should be for the amount of agency they've got in a situation. Those imbalances are really, really make things wonky. Um, the compass model is always pointing towards consent, towards connection, towards that place where everyone feels safe enough,
Mm,
everyone feels secure enough to keep going,
mm,
ongoing. And then the points on the compass, and it's not about moving towards any one of them, it's more about being mindful of all these four things as you navigate your way through decisions and moral conundrums and work out what's right or wrong from your perspective. The 4 points on the compass are the context. So that's the edges, the boundaries, the limits of the situation. Um, the beginning and the end of the agreement, the context that you're in for this particular piece of consent that you're navigating at any one time. Then there's curiosity, which is about informed consent. But informed consent is complex because you don't know what you don't know.
yeah. What am I agreeing to?
You do not know what you don't know until you suddenly find yourself in a situation where you go, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I need to find stuff out. So curiosity is the next one. Um, the third one is communication. Um, and it's that rather than explicit or enthusiastic consent is a thing that those are useful things to talk about when you're discussing sex education, for
Hmm.
example. But for me, it's about communication because sometimes consent is implied and sometimes that's okay. Like, we've got on this Zoom call to record this podcast, and we've talked about some of what's okay and some of what isn't, but then we got part way in it, and I went, "Oh, is it all right to swear?" And you said, "Well, yes, a little bit." So that's the communication bit. It's like, oh, like we're working out what we understand the rules are of this particular navigation
Yeah.
by communicating as we go. And then the fourth one is change, is that the fact that it can change. It can be reversed. I agreed, but now I disagree.
Yeah.
But it's not
Yeah.
that simple. It can be a slight course correction or an adjustment rather than a full-on yes or no. It could be a yes, but, or a yes, but actually now I'm feeling differently,
Mm.
So that those four pieces, context, communication, curiosity, and change, the four C's there, are the ways that we can navigate
Mm.
those consent-based decisions. So
Mm.
that's the model that I use,
Mm.
and I use it in my work as a coach for individuals, as a relationship coach, as a coach for businesses. At the moment, I'm doing a lot of work with entrepreneurs and businesses around what consent-based practices look like in entrepreneurialism and in business. And it's more than just having unsubscribe on your email list.
Yeah.
It's about how you connect with people
Yeah.
and how you engage with them, and not doing icky manipulative sales tactics, but actually
Mm.
just connecting with people and offering them a service and inviting them in and that sort of stuff.
Mm.
So, this principle of what consent is, for me, it can be applied to absolutely
Yeah.
anything. It can be applied to how we parent, can be applied to how I look after my dogs, can be applied to how I treat myself, the permission I give myself, as I said before, can be applied to how I relate to government. It's all right across all of those things.
Because I'm really interested in the parenting bit. You kind of just touched on it then. I'm really interested in the parenting bit and around consent and consent for our kids, that our kids can give consent for things to happen. And being devil's advocate here, Jen, some people would think that might be, well, actually just gives them free rein to do whatever they want. They can consent when they like, and they can take it away when they like. How am I meant to parent that? And I can hear that might be in the background for people. So
Yeah,
I'm just kind of wondering if I can drop that one in there for you to talk a bit around
yeah.
how that works in real life as
Mm,
a parent when we are trying to support our kids to be able to give their consent
mm,
in a way that is real and true for them and enables them to grow up to be adults that can make those decisions and be themselves,
yeah,
that maybe you or I, or maybe for me, I can't talk for you, but for me, that I didn't get that as a kid. It was very much, I had a dad that was very much, you do because I say.
yes,
And
and
that's
because
what I
I
was
said
taught.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Can I? No, you can't. Why? Because I said so.
Yeah. Well, what do we teach our kids when we do that? What are we saying to them? What we're teaching them is that an authority figure can
Mm.
say because I said so and expect compliance from us. That's what we're teaching them when we demonstrate. And whereas if you can equip your children with agency, um, and and say, I'd like you to do this now, or will you do that now, or then you are helping them to learn
Mhm.
how to use their agency. The tricky bit is, especially with young children, that of course they're going to, in theory, they're going to say, I want all the biscuits. No, I won't eat any of the things. No, I'm going to go outside without my coat on, etc. And I mean, it's up to you where you hold your boundaries around that, and go, well, okay, if you're not willing to put your coat on, then I'm not going to take you outside because I don't want you to get cold and I'm not okay with that. If you'd like to go outside, then you're going to have to put your coat on. Which is it going to be?
Yeah.
Um, and I, I mean, you could end up in a situation where you go, right, well, you kind of you have to be able to enact the boundary. You can't put a boundary in place that's fake. So if you're going to say to your child, if you don't put your shoes on, we're not going to school, or don't say that. Go, right, well, you're going to school with or without your shoes. Take them to school without their shoes. I bet you they'll only do it once. Do you know what I mean? Like, actually, when you give children agency and accountability,
Yeah.
then they begin to see the results of their own actions. So you take eating lots of chocolate. Actually, when children are given free range to eat what they want, they will perhaps make themselves sick the first time, but they probably
Mm.
won't keep on doing it because they feel horrible and they don't want to feel horrible and they will want to eat something a bit healthier after a while. So I think we tend to leap to this protective place where we go, I know better. It's my responsibility to tell them what to do. And it does take longer in the short term to navigate decisions with your child if you do it in this consensual way. But as they get older, what you then have is a young person who understands the accountability of their actions.
And that feels like the real key bit, isn't it? That accountability in there. It's
Yeah,
not just that they can go, I can do whatever I like.
yeah.
Actually, okay,
You've
well, if we're
got
going
to
to do
hold those
this,
bound. You've
what
got to be very
happens?
boundaried about it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like, so I can say to my 14-year-old, will you help me with this? And she can go, oh, I don't want to.
Yeah.
And go, well, okay, but I'm doing this and this and this and this today. And if you could just help me with this one thing, then I won't be quite so tired and we can have a better day, And and she'll be like, oh, well, when you put it that way, I
Mm.
can see that my small contribution would make us both have a better day. Or also the other thing that you can do with young people is kind of go, they want something, I need a different thing. Can we find a solution together?
Yeah.
These are my requirements. Those are your requirements. Let's try and find a compromise together here where, okay, you want to listen to loud music. I want to do this work in peace. Could you listen to the loud music with your headphones this
Yeah.
time? Great. Could you listen to the loud music in your room for a while? Great. There are solutions to be found instead of going, shut up, turn the music off, and just, like which is a quick solution, but is not teaching them
Yeah.
that agency and
And
accountability
then I
thing.
suppose there's another bit of your that you were talking about is that communication, isn't it? So it's that
Mm.
agency, but and that consent, but it's accountability, and then
And
actually there's some
context
communication, and you've
again,
got
and
to be able to talk.
all of those things in practice it's the context. Sometimes them listening to loud music while I'm doing something is great. Put
Mm.
the loud music on, I'll dance around the kitchen while I'm cooking the tea, great, lovely.
Mm.
And other times it's not. Sometimes the loud music's okay for a while, but then I've changed my mind and I want to listen to something else.
Depends
So
what song they're playing.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes, you can listen to loud music, but only if it's this. Yeah, all of that can, all of those are that the compass is kind of really a toolkit for helping remind you of what the strategies and the aspects of this might be to help
Mm.
you navigate those decisions, really. Yeah, it is time consuming and it is unnatural if you're new to it.
Mm.
And if you weren't parented that way yourself, which have, most of us weren't, to be
No,
honest.
no.
Certainly, I'm in my 50s. I know very few people my age were parented that way, but
And I always say that with kind of love for my dad because I think, my dad, it was the way that he was brought up. So they didn't know any different. And I often say with parents, we can only do as well as we can with what we know at the time.
yeah,
And then when we
absolutely.
know better, we go and do better.
Yeah,
Um,
and I guess there's a thing here as well about because one of the other things that I talk about a lot, of course, is my queerness,
mhm.
my gender queerness, and I know that um, especially actually for autistic and neurodivergent children,
Yeah,
gender questioning
yeah,
and queerness is a thing that can come up much more readily than for allistic kids,
yeah.
because because they're such inquisitive, curious, amazing minds, basically. Um, and with that, I think that we can learn a lot from our children sometimes as well, and not go, well, I know best, and because I said so, and because that's how it was in my day,
Yeah.
But actually, what if your have got something to show you that you can be curious about and that you can be open to and you can explore with them and not just go, no, it isn't, or, not be black and white about
Yeah.
it, but, go on the journey with them, try and keep finding that common ground with them through things like that.
And that can be tricky sometimes as a parent, isn't it? I think because you'd often place yourself knowingly or unknowingly in that oracle position of I know everything. And
Yeah.
when your kids are starting to come and talk to you about things that you don't know very much about, you can feel frightened by that, panicked by that. And sometimes when we get frightened and panicked, we shut things down
Mm,
rather than go at, like you talk about being curious. Talk to me more about that. I remember my boys starting to talk about Andrew Tate in my house, and I had no idea who he was.
mm,
And I've got two boys, and I was quite worried by that. And when I found out what it was about, my immediate reaction was to stop it, slam it down. Then you're not going anywhere near that.
mm,
But what we did was we had conversations around it, and they wanted to show me things about it, and I watched it with them, and we talked about it, and I talked about how it made me feel as a person, as a woman, how it made me feel, why I was worried about things, and we found a way through that. And but I could have gone down a route of I'm not having that in my house, and
mm.
we know, and I know that when you shut things down like that, it'll happen anyway.
Absolutely.
It'll just go covertly for
Yeah.
a bit.
I mean, when my older one was very small, he became completely obsessed with cars, and the reason he became completely obsessed with cars was because other people gifted him boy toys.
Yeah.
They went, here, have cars, have guns, have cars, have guns, have cars, have guns, and fighty things and hitty things. And I took no interest in the guns. I didn't take them away or say you couldn't play with them. I just went, yeah, whatever, boring. And then when he played with the cars, I took an interest in it.
Mm.
When he was small, we went, oh, well, mummy's not interested in playing with me with this, but she's interested in playing me with that. So let's talk about that. And developed to an absolute, well, it was his special interest for a while. A passion for cars that is still a thing that he has somewhat. And and so that's a thing, is just taking an interest in it doesn't necessarily mean they'll develop a passion for it, but and especially if it's something that you've got a problem with and that you've got some boundaries around and that you find harmful or worrying or scary or whatever it is. If you can have honest conversations with them about that and give them their agency and accountability
Yeah.
around it, and they can see how those opinions or behaviors or things might hurt someone
Yeah.
that they care about, then they're far more likely to come around. Whereas if you go, that's banned, you just make it really,
Yeah.
I want it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They want it, don't they? They
I'm
want
going to
the
do more of that.
yeah, it's really upset them. Oh, all right, let's try it.
Yeah.
Of course. So yeah. And I mean, I talk a lot about allyship in my work as
Mm.
well. And it is, for me, there's an awful lot of people who worry about cancel culture and that sort of thing and wokeness and all that worry.
Hmm.
And there is I understand that worry, I really do, because I have so many times been in situations where someone speaks up, say, with questions about women's safety in spaces.
Hmm.
And they say something clumsy that's misunderstanding, that's just, not thought through because they're curious and they're trying to work something out.
Mm.
And they're slammed down for transphobia
Yeah.
by someone who's like going, you can't say that. And then they go, ooh, and they entrench in a position.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can meet that question with empathy and curiosity and try to go, oh, hang on, well, I don't see it quite like you're seeing it right now. The way I see it is like this. My experience is that. I
And
know
I
people,
I
I know
love
about
that,
this
Jen.
thing. I've heard people have this
Yeah.
experience, and question their logic and just gently, without telling them they're wrong ever.
And I
They're
love
not,
that because I've seen your stuff at the moment as well out on Facebook and on your socials and stuff, and you talk about calling people in rather than calling people out.
yes.
And I think that even works with our kids, that doesn't it as well? Sometimes we call our kids out on stuff,
Yeah.
and actually it's about how can we call them in. And I love that kind of reframing of that. That's really hit home for me, and I love it.
And I mean, a lot of that learning along the way for me has come through a lot of listening to Brené Brown, actually,
Oh, I
around
love Brene
shame.
Brown.
Yeah, but around shame and blame,
Yes.
that in the because I said so school of parenting is
Yeah.
an I'm right, you're wrong this is good, that is bad. This is how to be a good person. That is being, you're a naughty boy, you're a naughty girl, you've done it wrong. That kind of teaching, well, you think about the times you're told that you're wrong, how you feel.
Mm.
You feel shame, you feel blamed, you feel rage, you feel like, F you about it, don't you? You're kind of like, there's nowhere to go from
Yeah, yeah,
your,
yeah. It boxes you in.
yeah. Whereas if you go, ooh, I don't like the way you, I don't like, I don't feel the same way you do about that. I don't like the way you said that. I'm struggling with that, especially if it's with your kids. One of the things I say to mine sometimes is, I know that you're brilliant. And I know that you're clever and that you're funny and that you're, all of these things that I know about you because I know you, know your mum and I love you. And it, and I'm, when you say that thing, or when you're interested in that thing, or when you tell me about the other, that doesn't sit well with me because it doesn't sound like you. It sounds like, where are you getting that from? Because it doesn't sound
Mm.
authentic to me. And like, can you help me understand where that's coming from? And by doing that, you are literally calling them in. You are meeting them where they are
Yeah,
instead of boxing them off and saying you're wrong, you've done it wrong, you're naughty, you're bad. They're only just going to shut down in shame and be angry with you from there.
yeah,
There's nowhere
yeah.
to go.
And the power of shame is so huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, whether we're kids or whether we're adults, I think I hate that feeling of shame, which is different to guilt. Um, guilt can be used in a
Yes.
good way. Shame is something different.
So the easy way to tell the difference between the two, I think, is shame is like
Yeah,
you
you are the
are
problem.
bad,
Yeah,
whereas guilt is you've done something bad.
yeah,
Generally speaking, it's
yeah,
one's about the behavior and the other is about the
yeah.
person.
And let's
Um,
face it, we all make mistakes. So we are going to do things in our
Absolutely.
life that are not they're not great. And we
Yeah,
can feel guilty about that and think, and next time I'm going to do that differently. But as you say,
yeah,
shame is very different and you get like toxic shame and all sorts of stuff that goes along with shame. That's
really very much.
a
And and
difficult one.
and I think really come back to that thing that we were saying before, where we started with perfect parent is if you do say, because I said so, and you do go, you're naughty at your child, for God's sake, don't beat yourself up about it.
No.
We all, if that's how you were parented, it's really hard to unlearn.
Yeah.
Be kind to yourself
Yeah.
about the times you lost it,
Yeah.
and then be accountable to yourself and your kid. I have occasionally shouted at my daughter and she shuts down, she melts down, she does the
Mm.
whole neurodivergent response. And I go, oh, bugger. I've I've really messed up because I can see her hurting now,
Yeah.
and I'm not afraid to go, I'm really sorry.
Mm.
I'm really sorry that I did it, that I talked to you that way. No but here, but I was angry. No, no, no. I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way.
Yeah.
And when they're re-regulated and when they're calm, you can then go, I got angry and I'm sorry that it came out that way. But I felt angry because I was frustrated
Mm.
because this was happening. Can we find a
Mm.
solution together?
And that's another thing, isn't it? That's not easy for parents is being able to go, I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
messed up.
yeah.
And I think it's really important for our kids to see that. I practice that a lot with my kids saying sorry so that they know I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. I messed up.
Mm,
I made a mistake or wasn't feeling great that day or this had happened or that happened. But like you say, but in that moment, because we do lose it, things happen,
mm.
that you hold your hands up and say, I'm really sorry.
Yeah, yeah. And that kind of honesty and that kind of accountability
Mm.
is modeling something I think really important,
Yeah.
and I think that when our young people see us do that, it really, really helps them to be able to do that with us and with other people in their
Mm.
life.
Mm.
And the one of the things I've absolutely um, both my kids understand is I don't mind if you make a mistake. I mind if you're dishonest and you hide it from me and you lie to me about it. That I will lose my temper about. whatever the mistake is, it doesn't matter how bad it is. I'm
Yeah.
here for it. But but please don't hide it from me. Please don't make it worse by pretending it's not
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
And for the most part, for the most part, they take that on board.
Yeah.
Certainly when it's important, they take that on board.
Yeah.
And it means that when it comes back to things like sexual consent,
Yeah.
actually, it means that they know they can talk to you about that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
They know they can bring their fears and their vulnerabilities and their mistakes to you to help them through it, even if they've messed up and hurt someone.
Mm,
That's really valuable.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm just thinking, Jen, as we're kind of coming towards the end,
Yeah.
if you were to go back, there's probably two questions in it, but if you were to go back and either give yourself a bit of advice when your younger days, or there's a parent out there at the moment that's really struggling with parenting in an additional needs family, have you got a kind of like a top tip or a little bit of advice that you think would have made a difference to you possibly when in your younger years?
I think maybe really leaning into that, it's okay. Um,
Mm.
your parents fuck you up, that's what they do, place. And really leaning into that forgiveness and going, it's all right, we're all learning, we're all
Yeah.
doing our best. I think that would be one thing. And I think the other thing would be um, practice a pause.
Mm.
Don't have to know in this exact right moment. You might not have the answer right now that your child is demanding, that an educator is demanding, that someone is demanding an answer right now. And the most powerful, most important thing is to be able to go, I'm not sure. I need some time.
Yeah.
I need a little moment here. And obviously the length of time is appropriate to whatever it is.
Yeah.
But nearly everything, there is space to go, right, for a moment at least, before we leap to a decision and an action and a choice.
Mm.
So I think that just pause and give yourself a little bit of grace, give yourself a little bit of permission and kindness and empathy and go, this is hard. This is
Hmm.
hard. Nobody taught you how to do this. Chances are, if they did teach you how to do it, they taught you from their perspective and it's hurt you as well as taught you things. So be kind to yourself, have a little pause, and know that whatever you decide might not be perfect, but it's you doing your best, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
I suppose what I kind of wanted to bring it to get to kind of bring it together at the end there, Jen, is thinking about, you are called Irregular Jen, and
It's
you which I would get quite excited because I feel like it fits with that untypical parent bit. And,
yeah,
and for me, I talk a lot with parents about being able to be them and step back into
yeah,
being them. And often as parents, we lose ourselves being a parent, whether we're in additional needs families or not.
yeah,
I mean, I remember, and I talk about this as a story that, I remember somebody asking me, well, what is it you enjoy? And I thought, I don't know. I don't know what I enjoy anymore.
yeah,
I'm certainly not doing it if
yeah.
whatever it is, I'm not, but I don't know anymore. And I think we lose ourselves in that. And,
Mm,
and it can be years and years before we get back to kind of feeling who we are. And then all sorts of things have happened in our lives. And I know you do a lot of work with people, Jen, and just I wondered if we could tell people a bit about what the work that you do or might be coming up, and if they wanted to work with you, what kind of things that you do that might
yeah,
support some of those parents. There might be some parents out there thinking, I need to be in Jen's life.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've kind of hit the nail on the head there, really, in so much as I'll be publishing my book later in the year, um, probably this autumn. I'm
It's
hoping to get it out,
exciting.
but in advance of the day of consent in November, which is the irregular way. And the thing about the irregular way is it is about saying no to normal
Mm,
and saying you don't have to fit in. You don't have to do as you're told. You don't have to follow the rules. You don't have to break the rules either.
yes.
You are allowed to follow the rules if that's what you want to do. Um, but like, yeah, that giving yourself permission to really be your most authentic self And to be as odd and irregular and quirky and weird and different and unique and whatever you are as you are is such a relief when
Yeah.
you do it. And when you do it, you also model that for your kids and for other people around you. You give everyone else permission to to be a bit weird and to not necessarily do it exactly by the book by showing up like that in the world. And that is so important and so powerful. There's such a lot of pressure on all of us, but especially on children and young people
Mm.
to fit in. But you can never fit in by trying and masking and trying to be a square peg in a round hole. What you
Mm.
really want to be doing is going out in the world in your own wibbly wobbly way, shaping it around you and making space for all of that weirdness and all of that irregularity and all of the possibilities that are there for you, for the people that you care about, for your work, for your life, for your business. That's what's behind all of my work. So whether it's one-to-one coaching or relationship coaching, or whether it's joining my new membership, which is about supporting people in a low-key way with like webinars and support around seeing the world this way and encouraging that kind of way of thinking. In all those different ways, and the programs that I run, it is about exploring possibility, saying no to normal. What even is normal?
I haven't met it yet.
And going, it's all right to do it differently. And
Yeah.
and when you do step off that standard track and the
Yeah.
regular way of doing things, and you start to go, I don't know where I'm going now because there's no rules out here
Mm.
and it's all a bit wibbly wobbly and I provide a space to sort of help you with the consent compass and other things to sort of steer your authentic way through life, through work, through relationships to find what is your shape. It's not do
Yeah.
it like me, it's do it like you.
And it's not just neurodivergent people, is
Oh
it,
God,
Jen?
no, no, no.
No.
I work a lot with neurodivergent people because, a lot of neurodivergent people relate to that kind of
Yeah.
irregularity and not normalness. I work a lot with people who are queer. I'm genderqueer, and queer myself. But I also work a lot with people who are just people who are change makers,
Yeah.
people who want to show up in the world and make a difference, make a bit of an impact. People who are struggling with, as you said, people pleasing or um, overgivers. There's a lot of overgivers out there. People who want to make change in the world and they're just giving and giving and giving and giving and not actually applying this to yourself.
Yeah.
You can't liberate the world unless you liberate yourself as part of it. So all of those different kinds of people, it's really about sharing those values of
It's really, and I think, for me, mine's come around my diagnosis about finding out my brain is dyslexic,
mm,
and actually knowing why it does and thinks in different ways. But actually, there's been something really exciting about that and really being able to lean into that. And that sounds a lot about what you do is
yes,
about being
absolutely.
okay with that. And we lean into it and go, do you know what? This is me, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Just giving yourself that consent, that's that permission to really fully be yourself
Mm.
and to not let judgment and tradition and old-fashioned ways of doing things to limit you, but actually to live the life that you really want, the life that you really choose, and know that by doing that, you're not being selfish. You're
Mm.
actually shaping a world that we all need
Yeah.
because we all need that. That freedom's not about um, choosing what I want and to hell with anyone else. It's about
Yes.
choosing what I want because I'm blazing a trail
Yeah.
that frees up things for
Yeah.
everyone to come with me.
Yeah.
It's about that consent piece of building spaces that are safe enough and secure enough and comfortable enough for us all
Yeah.
together. About building community
And
and
not
connection.
doing it and then harming people on the way.
No,
It's
no.
about, yeah, like you talk about it in the way that you're doing it.
Somebody said to me the other day about my business coaching that I'm like the Jiminy Cricket of the business world, like a sort of conscience on your shoulder of like, but that moment when you're going, oh, this feels a bit wrong. I'm not sure if I'm doing the right
And
thing
you've
here.
got Jen sat on your shoulder.
And I'm not judging, I'm not sitting there judging you.
No.
I'm sitting there helping you work
Yeah.
out how you genuinely feel about
Yeah.
it and what's right for you inside you. Never mind what the world is telling you,
Yeah.
what you know to be right in your heart and soul.
Yeah. Jen, I've really enjoyed our chat today. Thank you ever so much for coming on. I will make sure that all Jen's links are in the show notes so that they can find you if they would like to. But thank you ever so much for coming on. As I say, I really appreciate it. It's been really nice talking to you, Jen.
Thanks, Liz. It's been brilliant and good luck to everyone. Stay irregular.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Whether you were walking the dog, folding laundry, or just hiding in the toilet for 5 minutes peace, and there's no judgment here. I'm glad you chose to spend your time with me today. If you're a parent or a carer of a child with additional needs and you're feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, or just like you need a better backup, I've got you and I'm here to help you find a way through the tricky stuff. Like the moments when you feel like you might just run out of steam, so that you can be the parent that you want to be and take care of yourself too. If you want to connect, you can find me on all the social media sites, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn, where I share more tips, resources and real talk. And hey, if this episode made you laugh out loud or feel a little less alone, why not buy me a coffee? Just click the link in the show notes. It's a small way to show your support and keep this podcast going. Take care of yourself today. You're doing an amazing job.